Tonight, Tony Abbott tries to turn the conversation around, but is forced into contrition over his captain's pick for a knighthood.
The lesson that I learn is that there does need to be wider consultation.
Also ahead, the Indonesian government denies reports 2 Australian members of the Bali Nine are among the next to face execution. Police label a horror smash in Victoria that's left 4 young men dead, one of the worst they've seen.
And coming up on the Drum, Auschwitz survivors have urged the world not to allow a repeat of the Holocaust as they mark 70 years since the camp's liberation.
Good evening, Rachel Pupazzoni with ABC News. The Prime Minister has promised to consult more widely as the storm continues to rage over his decision to knight Prince Philip. He says he wants to move on, and he tried to do that today, calling for a national approach to combating domestic violence. But some of his strongest supporters have now joined the chorus of criticism against him. Rupert Murdoch is demanding the resignation of the Prime Minister's high-profile Chief of Staff. Political editor Chris Ullman reports.
This is the conversation the Prime Minister should have been having on Australia Day.
I mean, Rosie, your position as Australian of the Year can't just be a statement. No. It's got to produce action. And absolutely. That's why I think this is very important.
Rosie Batty is a powerful voice against family violence. Today, the Prime Minister made her the founding member of an advisory panel and elevated her campaign to the highest council of governments.
To act urgently this year to finally agree on a national domestic violence order scheme.
The appointment of Rosie Batty as Australian of the Year has been buried for days by the captain's call to knight Prince Philip.
I accept that this has been a distraction over the last couple of days.
Today there was contrition and a hope of redemption after a move that was disowned by the majority of his cabinet.
Obviously, there are some lessons in these things, and the lesson that I learn is that there does need to be wider consultation.
But as the nightmare raged into a third day, things got worse, as the battle was joined by some of the Prime Minister's strongest advocates.
I just cannot believe this.
The world's most powerful media baron weighed in again, demanding the head of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff.
Abbott again. Tough to write, but if he won't replace top aide Peter Credlin, she must do her patriotic duty and resign. Forget fairness.
The ABC understands that Rupert Murdoch has raised his concerns about government shortcomings directly with the Prime Minister. The epicentre of the internal anger against the Prime Minister is Queensland, which goes to the polls on Saturday. The Liberal National Party is bracing for the loss of more than 20 seats and gearing up to lay the blame for that at the feet of Tony Abbott. The Brisbane paper is portraying the Prime Minister as a joke, and that might be a caricature that's hard to shake. Chris Ullman, ABC News, Canberra.
The High Court has found the detention at sea last year of 157 Tamil asylum seekers was lawful. The group was detained on a customs ship for several weeks before being sent to Nauru. One man sought damages in the High Court, saying his detention was unlawful because he was denied procedural fairness. But in a 4-3 decision, the High Court disagreed, saying there was no such obligation on the government.
It has vindicated the government's position, and we welcome the result.
The law has now been changed, making any future challenge more difficult. A spokesman for the Indonesian Attorney General has denied reports 2 Australian drug smugglers have been listed in the next round of executions. Indonesia resumed killing drug smugglers earlier this month, and 2 Australians, Muran Sukumaran and Andrew Chan, have been denied presidential pardons. As Indonesia correspondent George Roberts reports, President Joko Widodo says there'll be no amnesty.
Another 9 drug smugglers paraded before the media, as Indonesia again makes it clear it's not going to let anyone off.
So in our positive legalistic, in Indonesia, more than 5 grams in illicit drug trafficking will be punished by death penalty.
Indonesia's anti-narcotics agency is celebrating the biggest drug haul in the country's history. Hundreds of kilos of methamphetamine, hidden in coffee bean bags, were destined for the streets of Indonesia. As well as incinerating the drugs and forcing the accused to help, authorities believe the death penalty is key to stopping the trade.
The 862 kilograms of crystal meth that's being destroyed here today is more than 100 times the amount of heroin that the Bali 9 attempted to smuggle into Australia.
Andrew Chan and Myron Sukumaran, the two Australians on death row for organising the Bali 9 trafficking attempt, are among those who the President is refusing to pardon.
And we are not going to compromise for drug dealers. No compromise. No compromise.
So no relief for the Australian? No?
Despite Indonesia's resolve not to let the Australians or anyone else have mercy, their supporters are using an online campaign.
I stand for mercy.
I stand for mercy.
We stand for mercy.
And a concert in the hope they can move the President towards leniency.
Look how many people care for you boys. You're not alone on this horrible, bleak path.
But it's unlikely to do anything to save the two men from the firing squad. The President has publicly declared war on anyone involved in the illegal drug trade. That's a promise he can't back down on. George Roberts, ABC News, Jakarta.
5 people have died and 2 more are fighting for their lives after a tragic 24 hours on Victoria's roads. In the state's central region, 4 young men were killed in what senior police have described as one of the worst road crashes in recent memory.
Severed on impact, the front and rear bumpers torn away. 4 young lives taken in a moment.
It is a shocking scene, one of the worst I've seen in my time as the Assistant Commissioner for Road Policing. It is something that certainly will stay with me for some time.
Police believe the driver was travelling north on the Northern Highway near Pyalong at 6:30 this morning when he lost control on a bend. The car appears to have hit a wire barrier and flipped into the air before rolling and hitting the tree. 2 men from Moama, aged 19 and 28, a 22-year-old from Echuca and 22-year-old Craigieburn man are thought to have died instantly. A P-plate was found at the scene, but it's not clear if a probationary driver was at the steering wheel. Investigators are trying to establish whether fatigue, alcohol or drugs were factors.
After such a good weekend, I suppose, with respect to the Australia Day weekend, we didn't have any fatalities. And then, in one foul swoop, we have 4 people killed.
Overnight, a girl and boy, both 17, were seriously injured in a hit and run in Melbourne's northwest. Police say the driver left the pair for dead after running them over at a pedestrian crossing on Taylors Road, Delahaye.
As I understand, they waited for the green light that allowed them to cross that road. They'd only just stepped onto the road when both pedestrians were struck by a motor car.
The boy is fighting for his life. Police are confident they'll identify the motorist. And this morning, during peak hour, a cyclist was hit by a car on Dandenong Road, Malvern. He died in hospital this afternoon. The driver is assisting police. Lisa Tucker, ABC News.
Victoria's government has extended its ban on the extraction of coal seam gas in the state. The moratorium on the controversial process known as fracking was first declared 3 years ago, but a review headed by former Federal Minister Peter Reith last year recommended the ban be lifted. Nevertheless, the former Napthine government extended the moratorium until July this year, saying more consultation was needed. And Victoria's Premier Daniel Andrews now says the ban will stay, pending a parliamentary inquiry into the issue.
The science should guide this. Respectful community consultation where you empower the community and give them a seat at the table. That's what's important.
The inquiry is yet to be established, but it's expected to take 12 months. Energy company AGL is being asked to explain why potentially toxic chemicals were found at one of its coal seam gas sites in New South Wales. The company has suspended its pilot project at Gloucester, but the environmental watchdog wants to know why it took the company nearly 2 weeks to raise the alarm.
For months, protesters here have been warning about the impact of fracking on water resources. Now they say their fears are becoming a reality.
The licence should not only be suspended, but should be cancelled.
Gloucester residents say they've been vindicated by AGL's decision to suspend its pilot program after banned BTEX concentrations were found.
We do not believe at this stage that they are in breach of any of the conditions of their title. However, we have issued essentially a stop work notice to them.
The government has sent investigators to the Gloucester site to find out how the chemicals turned up in water samples from 2 wells and a water storage tank.
A lot of the material could quite possibly be natural. Coal seams give rise to fairly unpleasant water chemistries.
The Environmental Protection Authority has issued AGL with a legal notice demanding records of sampling. The watchdog says there's been a lack of transparency after the company took 12 days to notify it of the results.
If there are concerns, if there are breaches, we'll come down like a ton of bricks.
AGL's defended the delay, saying it was simply trying to verify the results. The company says it sought expert advice which confirmed that the BTEX concentrations found did not harm the environment or affect human health. Right now it's all very quiet here in Gloucester. But given the opposition to fracking in the area, this is one fight the community is not giving up.
We'll certainly be looking into legal options available to us, and we hope that Roberts will take the appropriate action.
Resources Minister Anthony Roberts says the investigation is a top priority. Jackson Vernon, ABC News, Gloucester.
The Queensland election is now just 3 days away and both leaders have been talking up their plans for the Sunshine State. It's also become clear that Tony Abbott will have nothing to do with the LNP's bid for another term. The ABC's Chris O'Brien begins our coverage.
An LNP campaign lunch at the Convention Centre in Brisbane. The Premier Campbell Newman has in effect given another campaign launch speech just 3 days out from the election. He's again explained why he thinks Labor should not be elected and why his government should be. There is some federal presence here. Senator George Brandis is in the room, for example, but as has been made clear by the Prime Minister Tony Abbott, he himself, Mr Abbott, will not be playing any role in this campaign. That's interesting because at the start of the campaign, Campbell Newman said he might see Mr Abbott if there was something for Mr Abbott to do, for example, announce some infrastructure. But the Prime Minister's made it clear today he won't be joining the campaign.
I absolutely respect Campbell's right to run his campaign, and quite rightly and properly he is focused on doing the right thing by the people of Queensland, and what he's got is a strong team with a strong plan for a stronger Queensland, and he wants to focus on that. And to be honest, I want to focus on jobs and families. That's going to be the focus of the government this year. I accept that this has been a distraction over the last couple of days.
Quietly behind the scenes, some LNP strategists might be breathing a sigh of relief that Mr Abbott won't be seen, but they do feel in some ways a lot of damage has already been done to the LNP campaign by negative stories about Mr Abbott and the federal Liberal Party in the past week. We'll find out on Saturday just how big that impact has been.
The opposition leader is continuing a blitz of seats in the southeast corner and regional Queensland, but voters will still have to wait another day for major policy announcements. Anastasia Palaszczuk says Labor will release its costings and its law and order policy tomorrow, including its approach to outlaw motorcycle gangs. Now, despite campaigning strongly against cuts to the public service, the opposition leader isn't committing to hire back the thousands of public servants who lost their jobs under the Newman government.
Because some of them have got other jobs, Jason, some of them have moved interstate. But what I'm not going to do to Queenslanders is look them in the eye and then do something completely the opposite, which is what Campbell Newman did.
It's been a hectic day of travel for the opposition leader. She started in Mackay in North Queensland, visiting a mining support business, before flying 1,000 kilometres back to Brisbane and touring a number of electorates, including Nudgee here in Brisbane's north. She'll be back on the plane tonight, though, for another sweep of regional Queensland.
For anyone living with a potentially fatal peanut allergy, the idea of being able to eat nuts without having a serious reaction is a dream. Now, a permanent cure has moved one step closer to reality, thanks to Australian doctors.
Eating this peanut sandwich would have been unthinkable for Olivia May 18 months ago. But now she can, without becoming ill.
It's an amazing feeling. She can eat anything with peanuts in it.
The 7-year-old was highly allergic to nuts. Her doctors say now she's effectively cured.
Now I can eat food and I don't have to have a nappy pen there, and I don't have to worry about the food that I eat.
Scientists from the Murdoch Children's Research Institute tested 60 kids. Half were given a particular strain of probiotics every day.
We found the treatment was very effective.
In fact, after 18 months, 80% of the kids given the probiotic could tolerate peanuts.
These findings provide the vital first step towards developing a cure for peanut allergy and possibly for all food allergies.
This is what can happen when kids with an allergy come into contact with nuts. In the most severe cases, it can be fatal. Researchers say the probiotic seems to modify this effect, helping protect the immune system rather than destroying it. 10-year-old Sarah Bridgman also overcame her nut allergy in the trial.
She can enjoy life and we can be relaxed. It's been unbelievable.
Doctors stress the children in the study were tested under close medical supervision, as some did have allergic reactions. Despite the breakthrough, Olivia isn't making nuts part of her daily diet.
She doesn't really like peanuts, so she doesn't like the taste, the smell.
Scientists will see if the nut tolerance is long-lasting and whether the probiotic can work for other food allergies as well. Sophie Scott, ABC News.
The Japanese government says it's doing all it can to secure the release of a journalist being held by Islamic State. These are live pictures from Tokyo, where a vigil for Kenji Goto is being held outside the Prime Minister's residence. The PM, Shinzo Abe, says a new Islamic State video threat to kill hostage Mr. Goto within 24 hours is despicable. The video offers to free the Japanese hostage along with a Jordanian pilot if Jordan releases an Iraqi woman who's being held on death row. IS murdered another Japanese hostage at the weekend. The new Greek Prime Minister Alex Tsipras has told his first cabinet meeting the country will not default on its bailout debts. Mr Tsipras was elected on a platform of renegotiating international bailout packages and ending austerity programs. But European Union leaders had warned the new government in Greece that it must live up to its commitments. The Prime Minister says Greece will seek a fair and mutually beneficial deal with the EU. Holocaust survivors have gathered in Poland to mark the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi death camp Auschwitz. They've urged the world to never forget what happened there and in other death camps where more than 6 million Jews were murdered. Europe correspondent Barbara Miller reports.
Elderly, weak, but determined to remember once again the horrors that went on here and those who lost their lives. Several hundred survivors of the Nazis' most notorious concentration camp gathered in a specially constructed tent at what was known as the Death Gate. Their message to the world: never forget.
We survivors do not want our past to be our children's future.
More than 1 million people were murdered here, many of them Jews. Some of those who came today wore striped scarves to symbolise the camp uniforms they were issued with. Each inmate was also tattooed with a number. This survivor says the Nazis robbed them of their identity and then their lives. Ceremonies were held across Europe to mark Holocaust Memorial Day. Vera and Avram Schaufeld know this could be one of the last that they will attend.
We just hope that there's some purpose in speaking and in trying to...
And that our parents didn't die in vain, that, something comes out of it.
70 years after the Holocaust, anti-Semitism is on the rise again in Europe. weeks after Jews were targeted by one of the Paris terrorists. The country's president urged them not to leave.
You who are French Jews, your place is here.
As darkness fell on Auschwitz, one final act of remembrance. The number of those who lived through the Holocaust is dwindling year by year. Keeping alive their memories of the hell unleashed here is more important than ever. Barbara Miller, ABC News.
America's Weather Bureau has admitted it was wrong with its prediction of historic blizzard conditions for parts of the US East Coast. Several states preemptively declared emergencies that paralysed transport systems, but the so-called Snowmageddon failed to materialise. New York was supposed to be one of the hardest hit, but received only moderate snowfalls. Earlier, thousands of flights were cancelled, schools were closed, and the New York subway system was shut down for the first time in its history. Officials say it wasn't an overreaction.
Would you rather be safe or unsafe? My job as a leader is to make decisions, and I will always err on the side of safety and caution.
But the blizzard did have an impact elsewhere, piling deep snow in Connecticut and Massachusetts, with record levels expected in Boston. Australian golfer Robert Allenby is sticking by his story that he was kidnapped and beaten in Hawaii more than a week ago. Allenby says he has no memory of being at a strip club and is hoping the police investigation will deliver a breakthrough. North America correspondent Lisa Miller reports.
Warming up for his first tournament since hitting the headlines in Hawaii, Robert Allenby has lashed out at those questioning the assault.
The number one thing that you should all remember is that my story stays exactly the same as the way I told it.
The PGA Tour pro told police he'd been kidnapped, robbed and beaten after leaving a restaurant in Honolulu, a homeless woman coming to his rescue.
I never lied to anyone. I only told you what I knew and what someone had told me. That is the bottom line.
But witnesses gave different versions of events. The Golf Channel reported he'd racked up a bill in the thousands at a strip club that same night and suggested he'd hurt his face when he fell and hit his head. The 47-year-old thinks his drink was spiked.
From about 11:06 to about 1:27 a.m, I have no memory in my brain. I have nothing. There you go, sweetie.
What do you say? Thank you so much.
The scars on his face are fading, but he says the headaches have only just gone and he's clearly feeling emotionally bruised from the publicity.
That I was a victim and all of a sudden you're putting all the blame on me. So.
Police in Honolulu are continuing to investigate the case and Robert Allenby is hopeful they'll provide the full story.
Thank you.
Lisa Miller, ABC News.
The Socceroos shifted camp back to Sydney today after last night's Asian Cup semi-final win in Newcastle. Australia beat the United Arab Emirates 2-0, but there's no time to rest on their laurels. They have to regroup quickly before taking on South Korea in Saturday's final.
A sense of satisfaction outside the team hotel this morning, even though the players know the tournament is far from finished.
The job's not done yet. You know, making a final, that's something special.
And there we go. It's Australia's day as the Socceroos qualify for their second successive Asian Cup final.
For us to be there, I think, is a fitting way to end up what's going to be a fantastic tournament.
The locals had to wait a while to see the Socceroos in action. It had been 19 years since Australia played in Newcastle, but the side quickly made up for lost time.
And the header is in from Trent Sainsbury. Oh, what a start for Australia!
That goal in the third minute was followed 11 minutes later with another pinpoint strike.
Good block by the UAE defence dugout, and then Davidson will score! And Australia have a two-goal cushion.
To play in your region's final and to have the opportunity to win a trophy with your national team, it's something, you know, I think a lot of the boys, including myself, we haven't really comprehended.
An injury to Ivan Franjic remains the only fitness concern. He'll be monitored in the lead-up to Saturday's decider.
It's just unlucky for him. Obviously, I think he'll do everything to recover for the next game.
South Korea beat the Socceroos during the group stage and are yet to concede a goal this tournament. They defeated Iraq in the semi-finals to move through. But the Socceroos coach remains content with how his side is placed.
We've played 5 games, we've scored 12 goals, we've conceded 2. So I think, and we're in the final. I think that speaks for itself.
It's not the biggest game just for me, it's the biggest game for Australian football.
A crowd of around 80,000 is expected for the Asian Cup final at Sydney's Olympic Stadium. Patrick Galloway, ABC News, Sydney.
At the tennis tonight, number 1 seed Novak Djokovic is leading his quarter-final against Milos Raonic 2-0. Earlier, Andy Murray urged local fans to go easy on teenager Nick Kyrgios after defeating the young Australian in straight sets. Today, defending champion Stan Wawrinka swept aside Kei Nishikori, while Venus Williams was defeated, but her sister Serena advanced.
The Australian Open was always going to be a learning experience for Nick Kyrgios. Last night, he learnt just how far he has to go to compete with the world's best.
He was way too good for me tonight. There's heaps of things I can take from that match that I've got to go get better at, and yeah, he was just way too good for me.
Andy Murray has been a runner-up 3 times in Melbourne. He seemed determined to let Kyrgios know his place in the queue. Despite the result, the Scotsman was full of praise for his opponent and says critics of the Australian's on-court behaviour should cut him some slack.
He's going to make some mistakes, obviously. He's young and growing up in the spotlight isn't easy, and he's doing a great job so far, and he's going to continue to learn and keep getting better.
Another 19-year-old was in the spotlight on day 10.
That one's straight out of the copybook.
Madison Keys was vying with Venus Williams for a place in the semi-finals. After a bright start, Keys looked in trouble when she injured her leg in the second set. But she fought on, defeating her childhood hero 6-4 in the third.
Madison Keys shows she's got a heart as big as her ground strokes.
That left Serena Williams to continue the family campaign, which she did in style, defeating Dominika Cibulkova in straight sets. Stan Wawrinka's quest for a second straight Open title remains on track. His backhand as deadly as ever as he dispatched Kei Nishikori in straight sets. Damien McIver, ABC News.
Allan Border medalist Steve Smith says he'll be happy to hand the Test captaincy back to Michael Clarke when he returns from a hamstring injury. It's been reported that cricket officials have discussed appointing Smith as Test captain on a permanent basis, even when Clarke's back. But Smith says he's not aware of those discussions.
It's Michael's team, and when he's fit and ready to go, he's got the C next to his name. He's done a great job over a long period of time, and when he's fit, it's all his.
The prolific run scorer took the Test and One Day awards, as well as the top honour at the Allan Border Medal last night. The Australian Rugby Union has reaffirmed its stance that only players from the Super Rugby competition will be picked for the Wallabies. At the season launch today, CEO Bill Pulver said changing the policy would hurt the competition.
I still retain the view that if you open that up, you risk having a Super Rugby competition with no profile players and not a lot to offer for fans.
The Waratahs' Adam Ashley Cooper and Nick White from the Brumbies are among those heading overseas after this year's World Cup. Let's check the weather now. Here's Graham Creed.
We've still got some severe thunderstorms through Western Australia. Now, these are very active at the moment to the west and south of Perth. They are expected to continue to remain active over the next hour or two. Still have 1 or 2 also active through central parts of Queensland, but showers in New South Wales are becoming a lot more isolated now, particularly around the Sydney area where we've seen some very significant falls over the past 48-hour period. But those rainfall totals have really started to become a lot more isolated through the afternoon. Now, I've also got this area of cloud out in the Tasman Sea. Now, this is a developing low. It's going to see further showers about the south coast of New South Wales, some potentially moderate heavy falls through eastern parts of Gippsland, and also showers along the east coast of Tasmania. But this trough through the inland will continue to track a little bit further inland, and an upper level disturbance will move up towards the tropics of Queensland. So that area likely to see some further showers and storms tomorrow. And this trough will also remain active through Western Australia, so still the potential of some afternoon showers and thunderstorms pretty much through most of the western districts of the state, even down into the southwest corner and potentially for Perth. But at this stage, most of those showers and storms are relatively isolated. We can see that low pressure system across the southeast. Now, it's not expected to have any impact on Melbourne. It's really the far eastern parts of Victoria, the far south of New South Wales, the eastern and central parts of Tasmania. Could be an isolated coastal shower for Sydney tomorrow morning, but that's about it. For the most part, the city will will remain dry and will remain so for the next 4-day period. The low will still maintain those potentially showery conditions across the southeast. More thunderstorms on the way through the west, so a possible thunderstorm on the way again for Perth.
And that is ABC News for now. I'm Rachel Pupazzoni. The Drum is next. Thanks for watching.